So you just bought your first AR, you unzip it from the bag or you lift it out of the box and you smell that new AR smell. You want to go to the range and shoot it right away, but whoa. Hang on there for just 1 second. There's a few things that we need to do before we start throwing lead downrange. For example, most rifles will have some type of break-in requirements or best practices to follow before you start cooking off your first few rounds. The reasoning is that rifle manufacturers want you to have the best experience with your firearm. If you have a large chunk of residue or something in the barrel for your first shot, that could cause serious issues over the lifetime of the barrel. So right away, the first thing you should do when you get your new AR is clean it. So why should you clean your AR? I mean, it's brand new right out of the box, right? Well, the factory oils and greases that are found on a lot of new guns can be harmful, and the oil used during the manufacturing and shipping process is not intended to serve as a lubricant and primarily helps to preserve these metal components from corrosion. This oil can be a little messy and it often ends up coating various surfaces, so we need to get rid of it. The only way to do that is by doing a good old-fashioned cleaning. For example, again, if anything is in the bore, you know, the big hole in the front of the barrel where the bullets comes out, that could lead to pressure being built up and a lot of damage being caused to your gun. Maybe not right away, but over the lifetime of the entire barrel. So let's go over some quick cleaning tools that we'll need in order to get this thing all cleaned up. The first thing is CLP, and this type of cleaner is used all the time by lots of shooters, and it's what we use on our guns all the time right here in the shop. Next, you're gonna want some good gun lube, and I'm gonna suggest some G96 gun lube, and it typically comes in a squeeze bottle like this to make it easier to apply. There's higher quality stuff out there, but honestly, this is super common stuff that works well for under 10 bucks. I would also recommend getting some PCS gun patches. These are little tiny cleaning patches, and get a lot of them because you're going to be using them a lot, not just before the range, but also after the range when you're cleaning. And you can get them either online, but always support your local gun shop because you can most likely find them there super easy. I would also say getting extra long, maybe 6-inch cotton swabs or Q-tips. You can buy these on Amazon or even a lot of local big box stores. They work super well for getting in these tight spaces that we're gonna be working in. Next, you're gonna get a cleaning rod with a brush like this one, the Real Avid Gun Boss. Now, there are cheaper ones out there, but I like using the fancy stuff. Now let's move on to actually opening up the gun, and I would recommend a large work area. A workbench is great, but you could always just throw a mat on your kitchen table to work. Just make sure you're staying safe and that there's no ammo in the area. Now, before we do any type of cleaning or inspecting or anything, as boring as it sounds, take a few minutes to read through the owner's manual. That should be included with your AR-15, and follow the manufacturer's or the owner's manual's guides for cleaning, testing, and maintenance. Every gun is a little different, so pay attention to those first, but what I'll show you here are some of the best practices for any AR platform. Now we're gonna go ahead and take apart the gun. So we're gonna undo the pivot pins and the takedown pins and remove the BCG and charging handle so we can get good access to everything. So first we want to clean out the chamber and make sure that there isn't any oil or grease or dust from the machining process that's left over. If your chamber isn't clean, then that could lead to some trouble with the BCG locking the cartridge into place, so we wanna make sure that's clean first. Then grab those PCS gun cleaning patches again and get it wet with a little bit of CLP. Place it on the rod without the brush and then run that patch down the bore, followed by a few dry patches. Repeat this process until your patches start coming out clean. This is going to make sure that your barrel is clear of anything. Now, with the rod, attach the chamber brush and spray some of that CLP on it again and really clean out the chamber with the chamber brush. Brush that chamber 10, 15, 20 times until you're sick of it, especially the locking lugs area. This is where a lot of fouling can build up, so starting with it as clean as possible is super important. While we're cleaning out the barrel, it's important to remember that some manufacturers have break-in periods for their barrels. Ballistic Advantage, for example, with their stainless steel barrel, says that you should fire one shot, then clean it, and then do that for the first 10 shots. Then fire 3 shots, and then clean it again, and then 5 shots, and clean it again. My advice here is to look this up and follow these guides, but to be honest, most shooters don't pay attention to this at all. You always want to know the manufacturer's guides though, especially when things go boom. Now that the barrel and the chamber are all clean, let's clean the rest of the gun. Wipe it down with a dry cloth first, and then get some CLP on a cloth and wipe it down again. Specifically, wipe down the inside of the upper and get the magwell, the buffer spring, and even the buffer itself. And then we're going to wipe down the BCG. And this is really important because a lot of the time BCGs come with cosmoline on them. Now, cosmoline is an oil that acts as a corrosion inhibitor to preserve metal components from rusting or deteriorating, which is great, but this substance is sticky, and if you fire your gun with it on there, it will get really dirty. So clean it off first. So do the same process that we just did. Wipe it down with a dry cloth, then wipe it down with some CLP, and then if that cosmoline is still really caked on there, go ahead and grab a metal brush and start going to town on that thing. Wipe it down again with a dry cloth, and every metal surface of the gun now should have a thin coating of that CLP that almost feels dry, but will help protect against corrosion. Next, we're gonna lubricate the gun in all the appropriate areas according to the owner's manual. If your owner's manual tells you exactly where to lubricate, then you should follow that. However, a few owner's manuals omit this part, and this is where we suggest oiling almost any AR-15. First, you're going to lubricate the rails on the underside of the BCG. This is where it's going to slide over the magazine, so we want to make sure that sliding over is nice and smooth. You're also going to apply some oil on that smooth part of the bolt carrier group on the underside where it pushes down on the hammer of the trigger. Again, want to make sure that's nice and smooth, so we're going to oil that up. Then you're going to lubricate the cam pin area where the bolt actually rotates, because if that gets locked up, that could lead to some major issues and the firearm not cycling properly. So let's lube that up and make sure it's nice and smooth again. Next, we're going to lubricate the top of the receiver where the charging handle rides, and some people either like to lubricate inside the top of the receiver here, or they like to put a little bit of lube on the top of their charging handle. Either way works, but no matter what, you want to make sure that that charging handle action is smooth and rides really easily. Remember that when you go out to the range for the first time and fire this thing, then wear some eye protection for a lot of reasons, but that fresh lube will cause the gun to be a bit more gassy and could irritate your eyes, so always stay safe. Now that the gun is all lubed up, we're going to go ahead and do a quick inspection and test some components, starting with the trigger, and you're going to want to do it without the upper on it. You can block the hammer with your thumb and make sure that the brake and reset feel just fine, and then put the upper back on. Now, if you want, you can do a cycle test, and most guns will be just fine being dry fired, but snap caps are a great option to have on hand. These are little dummy rounds that you can put in and just make sure that your gun is cycling properly. You can also do a quick inspection, like lightly check other components like the muzzle device and the castle nut. If they move at all, make sure to torque these down to spec if they need it. Now, we got this thing all nice and clean, but we need to go over just a few other things that you're gonna want in order to be successful out on the range, starting out with your ammo choice. Now, I could spend an entire video series talking about the ammo choice, but what I'll say here is get a few different types of ammo from super reputable brands like PMC, Federal's American Eagle, and AAC. Something that works for the vast majority of gun owners to ensure that these brands work in your gun too. I would also recommend staying away from steel-cased ammo. Just get some good stuff from some reputable brands and make sure that it works in your guns. If you want to save some money later down the line, you can, but I would personally avoid it. Next is the magazines, and you need at least one magazine for your AR to run properly, and don't overthink it. Get some good quality mags like Magpul P-Mags, and maybe have some extra on hand. You don't need multiple magazines to go to the range for the first time, but I would suggest at least 2 for every gun that you have. But some guys have 3, 4, or even more. The next thing we're going to need is some sort of sights or optic. Most ranges actually require you to have these in order to actually enter the range, and you need them in order to actually see where you're aiming so that you can stay safe out at the range. Next, we're going to grab a dedicated rifle case or gun bag. In most places, you can't just walk into the range brandishing your new firearm. A good bag will protect your new gun and keep things like your magazines, ammo, your extra tools all organized. For my recommendations here, the Blackhawk Sportster is a solid choice, but if you want more spots to store magazines, then the Bulldog rifle cases are our top recommendation from all the guys around here in the office. The next thing I'm going to recommend is a logbook, and this can be an old notebook lying around that you keep in your range bag, or it could be a little note on your phone if you're more high-tech. In that book, you can put information like round count, keep track of the date and conditions of your range visits, how often you clean your rifle, a change log keeping track of any upgrades, what kind of ammo you use, and if your gun likes certain type of ammo better. Just spending 2 minutes logging stuff after a range visit will help you keep track of your rifle and help you take care of it properly. Now that we got everything we need, the next step is to put the gun back together, pack that thing in your bag, and head over to the range. And I would say after getting comfortable aiming your gun down range and shooting it, you are gonna want to sight in whatever optic you got to be as super accurate as possible. And I got a few tips, tricks, and ways to make it simple for you guys in next week's video right here, so take a look.